Welcome to Living Out Loud with your host, Jess Phillips, where we talk all things addictions, codependency, relationships, and the good, bad, and ugly in between. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Living Out Loud with your host, Jess Phillips. Really excited to be back, feel well rested, grateful for the break, but also very grateful to be back on the mic and talking about things that you guys want to talk about, that I want to talk about, ups and downs, ins and outs, the messiness of it all. And today I really want to focus on attention seeking. Somebody asked me, it's got to be a couple of months ago now, maybe last month, to talk about it. And ever since then, it's been brought up a few times. Friends, clients, ultimately this kind of need for external validation, wherever that is coming from. And we live in a world of online technology and social media and Facebook and Instagram and online dating and glued to our phones. No wonder we're readily available to get that kind of hit of dopamine wherever we go now. I was just saying to somebody today, I was going to say interesting, but it's actually scary. I wanted to order something that I normally would have gone to a store like Walmart or the grocery store to pick up. And now I just grab my phone, touch of a button, and it shows up at my door the very next day, which I guess is convenient, but also, I don't know, the whole thing spooks me a little bit, right? Like not getting out as much, not talking to people as much. Anyways, that's a whole other podcast for a whole other time. I'm really not here to talk about social media, but I do want to talk about, why do we attention seek? What is attention seeking? Do you still do it? How to recognize if you do it? And why did we start doing it originally? It's very easy to say blanket statements like, oh, they're such an attention seeker. Oh, they're just doing this for attention. Okay, that's great, but why? I always want to know why. I had a friend that used to bug me about that. She was like, why do you have to know why about everything? And it's like, because I do. I won't accept just a blanket kind of statement and move on. I really want to know why we do the things we do. It fascinates me. So let's start off with a few examples of attention seeking. So what that can look like in somebody's behavior. Maybe some shocking behavior could be when you're under the influence, intoxicated, going back to the topic of social media earlier, being very controversial on social media, throwing out some gems that are going to ruffle some feathers, fishing for compliments, protest behavior, any type of behavior that you kind of know in the back of your mind that you're doing for some type of gain or some type of motive, a little bit of shock value in there. And really, who do we do it with and where it's stemming from? And I can speak from personal and professional experience on this one. I think the thing with attention seeking when you're a kid is that I don't really think you realize, maybe some children do, but I don't think that you realize that you're attention seeking. When I was younger, and it's only hindsight, It's only looking back can I say like, oh, okay, I did this because I didn't feel heard or understood in the moment. But when you're like 5 years old, I highly doubt that you're thinking any of those thoughts, but looking back, it was pretty clear, I used to run away from my mom. We'd be in Walmart and I'd be like in one of the aisles, like talking to a grown man about God knows what, I don't even realize why I was doing the things I do, but I remember really kind of looking back and not feeling heard when I was younger, having a lot to say and not really feeling understood, like, oh, she's just a kid, kind of, be quiet or ignore it or shrug it off. And it's like, no, children have a lot to say, they have a lot to say. And just because they're young doesn't mean that they don't need to feel heard and understood and explore some of their wild ideas or their imagination. So, I think that it can stem from when we are much younger. Oftentimes you see it with multiple siblings in the family. Maybe one sibling is, you know, unfortunately, maybe physically unwell. They're getting a lot of the attention. Maybe a younger sibling kind of gets pushed aside a little bit. And, those feelings have to go somewhere. That energy has to go somewhere. So a lot of the attention seeking can actually start from when we are younger. And sometimes people can get really addicted to, positive attention seeking, this idea of perfectionism that I talk about a lot. When we praise children for their accomplishments instead of listening to some of their thoughts or their feelings or emotions. And it's almost like this reward system. When you do really well in school or you do well in a competition, you see this in competitive sports, right? Children who are in competitive sports when they're younger get praised at a very young age for these accomplishments. And that can really turn into this idea of, only if I achieve these, monstrous goals will I get that type of validation. And anything short of that, what happens? These feelings of not good enough. That bar keeps getting set higher and higher and higher and higher. And what happens to all the regular things, all of the little things that we should and can be celebrating. So I think that's a big one to mention as well, is really, the idea of a parent. And again, I don't say any of this that parents maliciously try to do this to their children. I think many parents do the best that they can. But I think that when you do constantly praise a kid for these external factors in their life, that will become a little bit of a problem as they get older. Another form of attention seeking, in my case, if you're not the best of the best, why not be the worst of the worst? That's a great form of attention seeking. It's like, okay, well, I can't live up to this standard, so let me go in the polar opposite direction and really mess some things up. And, interestingly enough, even if you're not getting celebrated for these kind of big achievements or sports or academia, you can really get a lot of attention from being the delinquent one, from being the problem child. I don't know. I don't know if I was doing it on purpose back then. I look back now. It was definitely a good way to get attention, that's for sure, but I'm not sure in the moment if I was doing that to actually seek the attention of the people around me or my parents. It just felt like it was a little bit easier to be the worst of the worst rather than try to be the best of the best. A lot of people have these kind of big goals and dreams when they're teens and getting into college and university. I just wanted to party as hard as possible. And I guess that comes with attention in itself, who you're hanging out with and how much can you drink and where the party is. So every dynamic can come with that. But, definitely as I've gotten older and the more people that I work with, it all has the same underlying tone of very low self-esteem and low self-worth. And that confused me for a very long time because, in the past couple of decades, I've met a lot of very confident, even bordering cocky type individuals, really boasting about all the things that they have and all the good that they've done. And, especially when I first got sober, I was like, wow, look at all this stuff they've got, and their stories. And that's one of the biggest flags that I look for today is, why are you so loud? Why are you so loud about the things that you've achieved or the things that you've had or that you have? It's one of those markers for me that there's something more going on there. I always share with people, when they're trying to find maybe a new mentor or somebody to talk to or someone to guide them spiritually, I always say the same thing. Look for the quiet people in the room. because there's a lot of things that just don't need to be said in that type of fashion. And it took me many years of feeling less than that I realized that these louder individuals or cocky individuals were just as insecure as myself or anybody else. It's just another wall that we put up. And again, another form of attention seeking. Hey, look at all this stuff I have, look at this fancy car, look at the money I'm making, look at this. And I get it, I get those things kind of fill that hole in the soul for a little while, but at the end of the day, if I have to shout off the rooftop all the things that I have, I should be taking maybe a little bit of a deeper look inside as to what's going on. I think when we're really focusing on low self-esteem and low self-worth, though, how that comes out for different people is a really interesting power dynamic. On one side of the coin, like I just mentioned, low self-esteem and low self-worth can turn very boastful. And that's, to me, where it almost borders into narcissism a little bit, right? Like, are we building this wall so high that I can't tell another person I actually feel really scared and insecure right now, so I'm just going to kind of create this new avatar that looks like I have it all together and not tell anybody? That's a dangerous path, because if that goes on long enough, where does that stored energy go? Where do those feelings of feeling less than or uncomfortable or insecure, what happens to those? Who do we get to talk to about those, right? When the wall gets so high. And I feel like I've been in those traps even myself, just really saying like, it's okay. I got this. I'll figure it out. But it's like, if you're anything like me, I need to share. I need to be transparent. I need to be vulnerable with people to feel that connectedness and to become right-sized. I remember hearing that term in one of my recovery groups, and it really just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, to be right-sized. What does that mean? Not being better than, not being less than, being equal to. Equanimity in all of our relationships. And that's very difficult, right? That's difficult for someone who struggles with low self-esteem or low self-worth to feel comfortable enough to say, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm struggling with. And instead of using attention-seeking behaviors to really just open up and talk to somebody about how we're feeling is very scary. So I understand that sometimes it can be probably easier to turn to one of those behaviors instead of being transparent. But to go back to that idea of that flip side of the same coin, becoming right-sized is really this idea of no longer having to be anybody but myself. And for all the years that I wasn't able to do that, I either played the hero or the victim. I'll put it that way. And the hero feels great. The hero feels so good, and I can help people, and I'm the go-to friend, and everybody's coming to me for advice 10 years ago. Meanwhile, I'm a hot mess inside, a total hot mess. And I can't tell anybody because I'm the hero. I want that title, right? Because the title makes me feel good. That avatar makes me feel good. Finally, I feel like, wow, I've got it so together that other people are coming to me. And that has a shelf life because I'm only able to sustain that for so long. Because ultimately, I've just turned back into a liar, right? It's really this idea of like, I'm up here, you're down here, come and see me, I will help you, I'll be the sounding board. Meanwhile, who am I talking to about my issues? Who's my sounding board? Where's my transparency? Where's my kind of level of balance inside? And it was quite off balance, right? Because I loved to be, and I think we can do it in all kinds of ways. I was having a conversation with a client this morning, and I asked them if two things can be true at the same time. And I fundamentally believe that it can, because I believe that most people have good intentions. Can we be attention seeking and still want to help at the same time? I think so. Can we be playing the victim and want people to feel sorry for us and still want to be able to handle things on our own deep down inside? I think so. I think it just takes a while for that authenticity to come together and, for your insides to match your outsides. So on the opposite side of that coin is the victim syndrome, right? That's another form of attention seeking. And I'm going to talk about this very delicately because from personal and professional experiences, there's things that people have gone through, myself included, that, were never deserved, that were horrible, that were traumatic. So we're not talking about that right now. We're really talking about more lighthearted attention-seeking behaviors. And I'll give you an example of how I can play the victim. Maybe there was a disagreement or an argument with a partner or a family member, and maybe deep down inside I knew I was in the wrong, or I knew I should have apologized, and instead, one of my go-tos with family members could just be like throw one of those adult temper tantrums. I don't know if I'm the only one that's ever done that, but loved ones get it the worst. If anybody is going to see the height of your attention-seeking behaviors, it's family or your spouse, right? Because there's a level of comfort there that it's like, no matter how badly we behave, most of the time, we know that they're not going anywhere. With other people, like friends or acquaintances, they're not going to put up with the same shit that our families put up with, So let's take that for example. And, I've thrown a small tantrum and I enjoy playing the victim in that role where it's kind of like, feel bad for me. I didn't get my way. Used to do it a lot in relationships, right? They call it protest behavior, where I'm kind of stomping my feet. I want what I want. And that really kind of can fall into the trap of attention seeking as well, because what happens is the split personality comes back. The conflict inside comes back. One part of me is saying, okay, Jess, be a little bit more mature. Whatever you blurted out, you were in the wrong. Just take some time, apologize. And then there's the other half of me, which can be more of that like egoic, childlike self, where it's really like, no, I want my point across. I want to win this, whatever's coming up for me. And that alter ego tends to come up. So that's a big one to pay attention to too. So when we're talking about attention seeking behaviors, I started off mentioning that kind of validation, why I once heard a quote, I hope I don't ruin it, that said, don't worry about what I'm doing. Worry about why you're worried about what I'm doing. And I love that one because I was always worried about what everybody else was doing, right? And I really needed to focus on what I was doing and my motives and my thoughts behind my actions. So when it comes to validation, and especially going back to my original point of being all over social media, I always say the same thing to clients or friends that ask me, am I doing this for attention? And I always say the same thing. Only you can answer that, because I truly believe that fundamentally people all have that inner guide, right? I choose to call it God consciousness. Some people call it intuition, spirit, universe, God, whatever you want it to be, that small little voice that you can hear when your mind is still. And mine is usually pretty clear. And when I'm about to do something, it normally says like, this is a fucking terrible idea, but I'm going to do it anyways. Or it's this very kind of just pure act, right? And the pure acts of mine don't really go to this place of like justification or my mind spinning out. It kind of just is what it is, as much as I hate that statement, but it's true. So what I would suggest is checking in with yourself, always checking in with that hidden motive. Why am I about to do what I'm doing? I hear this a lot with breakups, right? So break up and then, we know it's over, but we still kind of want the attention from the other person. So, am I posting to get their attention? Am I posting so that they see? Am I putting this out there, right? So that would be some type of underlying hidden motive that we would have to our next action. So those are the type of things that I would definitely pay attention to see if we are attention seeking or not. And, ultimately really showing, really putting out a false sense of self, right? When I am or have been in the past attention seeking, it's really about creating this version of myself to gain something, and deep down, really the majority of the time, it's always just been like, God, I just needed a hug, or I needed some type of intimacy, and not even necessarily on a romantic level, just a nice talk with a friend, connection, community, just being unable to ask for those things so it can come out more as attention-seeking behavior. Because again, it's hard, guys, to be vulnerable, especially if you didn't grow up in vulnerable households. There was no vulnerability in my house whatsoever. At all. It was never modeled. Nobody did it. Nothing was talked about. So as I got older, it was so uncomfortable for me to say, I'm hurting right now. I'm lonely right now. I need X, Y, and Z right now. That took years of practice. Normally, it would just look like go to Fairview and spend a boatload of money I didn't have, because I didn't know what was happening inside. It was just these feelings that would come, or the binge eating, right? Or smoking cigarettes, or whatever, or texting an ex, you name it. I've done it to try to relieve the feeling that's going on inside. So another good marker to pay attention to if you are engaging as to what you think is attention-seeking behavior, because also too, everybody's behavior is going to look very different, right? Not everybody might binge eat like me. Some people might be, addicted to having promiscuous sex, or gambling, or picking fights on Facebook, right? Like that one always fascinates me, and I just watch these threads of people going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It gives me anxiety, So whatever it is that you're engaging in, it doesn't really matter what the type of seeking is. It matters what's going on the inside, and how we feel and why we're doing it. And I think from what I have learned, and I know that this is a lot easier said than done, is that the people who are attention seeking the most, and who can be exhausting, and who can really just grind your gears to watch, or you might be taken aback by their behavior, they just really seem agitated or upset a lot, are usually the people that need the most love. And that took me a long time to realize too, because I was just only focusing on the behaviors that I would see. I was getting very triggered by their behaviors. People being very loud on social media, or people being mean to other people. I mean, it's not to say to put up with stuff like that, but I used to look at it in a very different way. I used to look at it like, oh my God, how can these people do that? How dare they say that? How dare? And now I just look at them like, oh, you're really hurting inside. You're really hurting inside that you need to be that loud, or that angry, or to treat people like that, or to start fights, or honking, or freaking out in the middle of the road, And now I just kind of look at them like, wow, there's a little kid in there that needs a hug. There's a little kid in there that never got the connection, the protection, the understanding that they needed. And trust me, I never thought that I would be up here talking about how to soothe your inner child. Because if you would have said that to me 10 years ago, I would have crawled out of my own skin. And now it's really at the entire essence of what I believe. Because we mature in our physical bodies, but inside, emotionally, if you're never taught, or if you're never taken care of or protected, and those emotions were never tended to, you're just a person in an adult body with very childlike emotions. And that was very much the case for me. So all to say ultimately is, check your motives if you feel like you're engaging in attention seeking behavior, and just ask yourself why, and try not to get into windy arguments or conversations with people because, again, I truly believe that the most of us have our own answers, so really getting quiet, checking in, also checking into how you feel after you engage in the attention seeking. Because oftentimes, I don't know about you guys, but I was in search of something. So I was engaging in the behavior to get the result, and the result in my mind was something that was going to make me feel better or okay, right? This next thing will be okay. This next relationship, I'll be okay. Once I argue with this person, then I'll be right? No. It never gave me the satisfaction that I thought that it was going to give me. That goes into a whole other episode about fantasy, but I'm sure many of you can relate to the fantasies that we've played out in our heads, right? Arguments, breakups going a different way. Oh, I wish I could have said that or said this. So just really kind of getting introspective about why we're engaging in the attention-seeking behavior. And first of all, acknowledging the behavior. I think that's the number one step in any type of healing process. Because if I'm not aware... Yesterday I posted this video, 5 tips how to spot a narcissist, and I was in one of my recovery groups last night, and I must have had at least 10 people come up to me and they're like, Jess, I have a lot of the things that you mentioned in the video. And I started laughing and I'm like, that's okay. It's okay to have narcissistic traits. It's very normal, right? Because a true narcissist would never even ask that question. They would never even acknowledge the video. They would never even say, oh no, I might have some of those, right? So that goes for the same with acknowledging attention-seeking behavior. If you don't know you're doing it, then those are not the people that I'm speaking to right now, because this would just go right over your head. So the idea of, if you're having maybe some guilt or some shame or some confusion around your attention-seeking behaviors, or maybe you're engaging in certain behaviors and then you're crashing from them after, that was a good marker for me. I was going really, really, really up in whatever it was that I was engaging in, and then this huge emotional crash would come. So that's a big one to pay attention to. So step 1, really acknowledging the behavior. Maybe write it down. And it could be patterns, right? For me, I remember when I got sober, I had a really hard time on the weekends. I would stay very, very busy during the week, and then the weekends would come and I would get really squirrely because I hadn't planned properly. I'm not drinking anymore, so I'm not going to the bar or to parties or whatever it was. So that's when I started to notice different behaviors that were coming out for me. So really step 1, acknowledging that behavior. And when it comes to being in relation to others, because that's a lot of the time where the attention-seeking behavior can come out. So I mentioned before, family members, I think I'll always remain a 5-year-old girl when I'm around my mom or dad, right? So very easy for me to be like a little bit extra melodramatic when I'm around them, or like, oh, poor me, I've had such a busy week, or I know how to play that card with them, right? So when we are in relation with others, so family members, friends, a partner, if we want to work on some of those attention-seeking behaviors, another suggestion that I would put out there is do a lot more listening than speaking. That was a very foreign concept to me before. I liked to do a lot of the talking, right? I've always been the talker. I like to, especially when there's a large crowd, right? Some people shy away from that, and it's like, I want to talk more and get more of the attention and be funnier and be this. I really had to learn to start to actively listen a lot more. And there's a power in that, right? Because there's a power in really not just stopping talking and waiting for your turn, really actively listening to the issues or the problems of somebody else. Just being a platform for them to speak and share, and really kind of calming your nerves inside, because a lot of times people can get very hyped up when they're with each other, right? Depending on what group of friends you're with or what activity you're doing. It could be a lot of like egos together, a lot of large personalities together. So try to pay attention maybe when you're one-on-one with others. And if you have been engaging in attention-seeking behaviors lately, try to see how it feels when you're with somebody else and just really kind of listen. Just do a lot less of the talking and more of the listening. And I think my final tip, which is probably included in a lot of topics that I talk about, but, well, 4 tips. 3 being therapy, right? Therapy, coaching, speaking to somebody, because yes, acknowledging these issues are great, these tips are great, but if we don't get to the root cause of why we do the things that we do, chances are we're going to keep repeating them, right? Because I can start to catch myself like, oops, I'm attention seeking. Oops, I did it again. Oh, I'm going to do it a little less. But if I'm just putting a Band-Aid on those issues, chances are in a few months, next year, 10 years, whatever it is, it's still going to be my go-to, right? Because there's some type of gain that I'm getting from it that I haven't addressed at a deeper level. So 3 would be therapy, coaching, counseling, whatever type of service you feel comfortable in. And lastly would be not only self-care, but an extreme level of self-care. I was laughing to myself today. I remember, I don't know if it was when I was in rehab or it was one of my mentors in my recovery program, but somebody said to me, they're like, Jess, you need to just do a little extra work. You're a little bit sicker than the others, so you're going to have to do more work. And I was so personally offended at the time, and now I laugh about it, right? So this idea of an extreme level of self-care means I can't afford to stop doing the things that still my mind, that encourage me to help others, exercise, being honest, being transparent. If any of those become blocked, and the scary part is that oftentimes I don't even see it happening. So those become blocked. One thing piles up onto another. And in a very short amount of time, who knows, right? Like, who knows? I might be behaving a certain way with my family. I might be attention seeking. I might be engaging in destructive behaviors such as binge eating, overspending, whatever your go-to is. So this idea of an extreme level of self-care, it becomes a non-negotiable for me now. So, even if a day or two goes by, and they could be little markers that are probably quite normal and routine for a lot of people, but even cleaning the dishes at the end of the evening, right? Not letting things pile up, waking up with dishes in your sink, or, somebody you should have called back and didn't tend to. And we just kind of let these things pile up little by slowly. I think it can cause like a lot of debris and conflict inside. And they can be even larger things too. So this idea of self-care, and I think speaking with others, connection and community, I don't think I realized how lucky I was to have a recovery community for the past 15 years, because the older I get, the more that I realize a lot of people don't have a sense of community. They might be very busy with work or their families, and those are wonderful things too, right? But at the end of the day, we need people that we can relate to and that we can be honest with. And not everybody has the chance to hire a therapist or to hire a coach. So having some type of community where you can connect with other people and really practice a level of transparency that doesn't involve going to the bar and get hammered, because that's not real transparency. Like, you might be really honest in the moment, but it's a different level of transparency. So that can be included too in self-care, because I know from personal and professional experience, especially personal experience, is that when I'm not feeling great, my mind tells me to isolate. And it's actually the last thing that I should be doing. I should be really getting out there and connecting with other people. So long story short, and I'm very proud of myself, I told myself 30 minutes, it's 34 minutes. I want to start doing shorter episodes so I can put more content out for you guys and not talk for 90 minutes. So in a nutshell, attention seeking, asking ourselves why we do it, what's the motive behind it, what are we really asking for, right? Picture little version of you inside, little Steve, little Nick, whoever it is, right? And ask yourself, what do you need right now? What type of soothing do you need right now? What type of soothing can I engage in instead of engaging in the attention seeking behavior? So acknowledging the behavior, doing more listening than talking, connecting, right? Community, some type of community, recovery community for people who aren't in recovery, some type of therapy, coaching, a best friend, someone that you can be your authentic self with. That's a whole other podcast in itself, but learning to be the same person on the inside that you are on the outside takes an extreme amount of work. And it's extremely freeing when it does happen, but we don't often get a large pool of people that we really can be our authentic self with. So that's really helpful as well. And lastly, this idea of extreme self-care, and that might look different than my level of self-care, whatever it is for you guys, kind of putting pen to paper, getting that down. What type of routine do I need to engage in day at a time to help me feel on track, to not let me get lost in my thoughts, to not let me feel conflicted that I begin to engage in attention seeking or maybe some sabotaging behaviors, and staying on track in your own way, And the beautiful thing about life is that you can just do this every day. It doesn't have to be a 1-month venture or 2-month venture, or I'm going to change my life in the next 3 months. It's like, just see how you do today. How authentic were you being today? Did you lie today? Did you pick a fight for no reason today? Did you try to ruffle someone's feathers today? And then at the end of the day, check in with yourself, right? Why did I do that? What did I need? What can I do better tomorrow? And then try your best again to do it tomorrow. As always, it's been a pleasure on here. I love you guys very much. Keep your suggestions coming, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks, everyone, for listening and supporting Living Out Loud. Be sure to tune in next week for another fun, juicy episode.